So today we'd like to discuss a few of the points of the Maimer for this year, the Maimer that was said in Tafshin Chaf Hey, which is 1965, the 15th, explaining the 15th chapter of the Maimer of Basi Legani. So that's what we're going to do today. Bezrat Hashem. A few of the points which are very, very interesting and see exactly what we could take out in a practical way for ourselves. What I took myself personally, I'll share some thoughts. Hopefully, I'm not too off. Here we spoke till now about the concept of Or Ein Sof Lemala Aden Ketz Ulemata Aden Tachlit. We spoke about the fact that the light of Hashem is above to no end, and below, it reaches below to no purpose. It's not really no purpose to no finality, if you could say that. What we mean till now, in the previous chapters, we explained the fact that God's light goes to the lowest possible level and reaches, because it's infinite light, it comes from Hashem, therefore it goes to the lowest possible level. There's no level that it doesn't reach. Now we're going to explain how the light of Hashem goes to the highest possible levels, to no end, and the concealment, it's concealment after concealment after concealment. What does that mean? What does it mean that there's a concealment, and after the concealment there's an infinity of concealments? So for this, we have to explain the concept, which is a very basic concept in Chassidus, but a very important concept, the concept of the Tzimtzum, the fact that God constricted his light. What does it mean he constricted his light? When we speak about the Tzimtzum, we're talking about the fact that at the beginning, the light of God was filling all of existence. And what happened? Hashem put his light aside, so to say, and therefore there was darkness, and through that darkness he emitted some type of what we call kavehut, which we're going to refer to as like some type of beam of a light, which is all-encompassing of his light, which descended to the different levels and brought about the existence of this world in a way that it can handle it. Big words. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about? So now that I said the words, I'm going to give you the parable, and from the parable we'll be able to get a little grasp on what's happening. Imagine you have a teacher, and the teacher is an absolute genius in Torah. And therefore, he has from the most simple explanation to the deepest possible explanation with all its facets, with all the books and so on and so forth. So you can imagine the amount of information there is in his brain. Now he has to explain to a simple student or to a 5-year-old or to a 10-year-old a very complicated concept in the Talmud. If he's going to start giving him all the concepts of the Talmud and all the things without isolating this exact point that he wants to make at a level that the student can understand it at his level, and all the 30 students in his classroom, from the genius to the simpleton, should be able to have a grasp, each one at his level, he's going to have to really put aside all of the knowledge, the incredible genius knowledge he has in quantity and in depth, and put all of that aside. What do you mean he's going to have to put that aside? What does that mean? You put your brain aside? It means that you cannot think as if you were thinking for yourself. You're going to have to think the way you're thinking for another. Now, when you understand that the other standing before you is not going to understand what you understand, so what do you do at that point? You say to yourself, 1 second, let me reformat the information. Let me forget everything I have. Everything I know, I'm sorry. Forget everything I know. Not forget in the sense that I'm going to erase it, but I'm going to now not have it as my home screen, the screen that's going to be prominent and open before me at this moment. You understand? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So when I was in training, we were very responsible for giving classes. So I had all this knowledge that, like you said, I had to bring down to a lower level for them to understand. But the only way for me to get down to that lower level was to know the higher level. Do you understand what I'm saying? I had to have such a good grasp of what was going on that I could reduce it to a more simple level and then bring them back up to a level where I thought was appropriate.
And why did you have to know a higher level?
Or else I would not have that understanding of the material. And it was also incumbent upon me in the position I was in to know the highest level at that time.
Very good. I think you just explained the end of the mimer.
Oh, okay.
We're going to get to that. No, thank you. That was very, very nice. So basically, you have to simplify. Simplify does not mean dilute. So how do you simplify? So first of all, you have to put all these ideas you have in your head. You think about the pasuk, for example, ukshartam leot al yadecha, that you should wrap the tefillin around your arm, and everything that implies at every level. You say, you know what? I'm going to put all this aside. What is essential for that student to know? Once you put it aside, it's as if you just put it in the background. Once you put it in the background, it means that basically in the front of your brain is really darkness. So you put it aside in order that there should be, and at that moment there's darkness, there's nothing. After that you reformatted the information into something simple, essential, all-encompassing, in a few simple words, then you break through that darkness, that moment where you skip, so to say, the darkness, and you go through that darkness and you emit a light. Hashem did exactly that. Exactly that, whatever we understand. Hashem put his light aside, and then there was the darkness of the Tzimtzum, and then God gave us, he basically emitted this beam, kavehut, of light, which is Or and Sof, which is the infinite light of God, Lemala Mala Aden Ketz, which is the highest possible, and at the same time, which is able to reach the lowest possible. Now, I understand how the light of God, which is infinite, can permeate and penetrate. Now that it's been reformatted, it can permeate and penetrate every being at its level and its capacity to receive and to be vitalized and brought into existence by it. What does it mean that God's light is dark? It's the concealment as well, from level to level, is infinite as well. So to understand this, we have to understand what the Avodat HaKodesh says. The Avodat HaKodesh says that the same way that God, the light of God has the power in infinity, in not being limited, he has the power of limitation as well. He has the power, because if you're going to say that God has the power to be infinite, but not to limit himself, you are saying that God is not complete. And therefore, the power of limitation as well is important. The power of limitation is an expression of God as well. And therefore, as we go from level to level, whenever there's a concealment, that too is a part of God's expression at every level. Now, at the end of the Maimer, he says, in order, they both, the infinite light of God and the limitations, the koach hagvul, the power to limit of God, they both come from Hashem. But the emanation of God's light is something which is natural, because that's what the nature of light, to shine. And therefore, the fact that God has to limit the light is something really, to an extent, which is higher than the light itself. The limitation to the light is something that has to come from a higher place. You understand why? Because you can't have the light itself limit itself. You have to have something which is going to be higher to limit that light. That's what you were saying before. Before you were saying that in order to teach younger and whatever students and less knowledgeable students, it wasn't enough that you should have your own level of understanding. You needed to go to the highest level of understanding possible in order to have the power to limit things to their understanding. Because when you don't have all the tools, a part of the tools to limit is to be able to know exactly what you're shining and how you're shining that light. And then the Rebbe is going to say at the end of the Maimer that Achen ata kel mistater. Indeed, you, Hashem, ata, you, Hashem, are the God that is concealed. What does that mean? You, Hashem, are the God that concealed. You is the source, which means you, your essence, is the source where both the power of revelation, kel, and the power of you hiding yourself, the power of limitation, and the power of revelation, infinite revelation, are equal. At the level of your essence, it's the same thing. Now, you understand the problem with limitation. The problem is that when you come to what's called koach hagvul, when these limitations come and basically limit, so to say, God's light. So God's light is more concealed and more concealed and more concealed. So that power of limiting and defining goes down. The lower it goes, the more it's apparent. And what's the least apparent is the light of Hashem, and more the power of the limitations. And that's why a person can come to say, like Pharaoh, Lio riva ani asitini, I created myself. Because I don't see the vitality, I live within the limitations. And therefore, what is the avodah? What is the service, so to say? Like, what do we take out of this Maimer? That even the concealment of God is God Himself, and it's a part of the infinite power of God. So I'm going to tell you what I took from the Maimer. This is a personal thought; it's not written anywhere. What I took from the Maimer is, I have people that come in my office all the time, and they start telling me about their problems. Rabbi, trying this doesn't work, this doesn't work. What does God want from me? Well, there's a power of surrendering to God and recognizing in the limitation, in the concealment, that too is God. Once a person is able to lose his ego, lose his own limitation, then he is able to tap in to that vision that the limitation itself is God. It's a power of the infinity of Hashem. Ata, the essence of God, is there in the limitation as much as in the revelation. And therefore, when a person is going to come to a level of simcha, of joy, understanding that at that moment God is actually closer to me, right? That's what it says in chapter 26 in Tanya. At the moment that there's a limitation and a concealment, so then he reveals, as it says in chapter 11 of Igot HaKodesh, he reveals that the concealment was really good. It was there to protect the blessing that's enormous that's coming. But this is a whole avodah. It's a whole service. Another point I learned from this mimer is that now let's take it to the Basi Legani, because after all, this is a Basi Legani mimer, right? We have to take it to the beginning, which is that Hashem wants that his house should be down here within the limitation. And he says the only way we're going to be able to bring God's light, which is infinite in the world, is by being like a mikdash, a mishkan, a sanctuary for Hashem, a tabernacle for Hashem. How do you do that? Through iskafia and isapcha, especially to iskafia. Through breaking, not your body, through breaking your nature, breaking yourself, through the self-control. So then you have something which is extraordinary that's happening. Your self-control, you breaking your nature, brings about a light which is above what the world can handle. And this comes in a split second. And to this I want to share with you what Rabbi Selam from the Rosh Kollel of Das Menachem shared with me, which is absolutely mind-boggling. He's before becoming a Rosh Kollel, he's an engineer in aeronautics. Aeronautics. So basically there are 7 levels, right? There's 7 planets. In the second rakia, right? We said that what happened is that Avraham Avinu, when Adam sinned, he pushed God's presence to the first heaven, to the first rakia, and then the second rakia, and then the third rakia, and so on and so forth, right? Till the 7th rakia, till the 7th heaven. What's in the first rakia, in the first heaven? It's the source of fire. In the second heaven, you have all the planets, from the moon all the way to Saturn, the 7th planet. What is the distance? Let's talk now about distance. And this is where it gets mind-boggling. The distance between Earth and the moon is 400,000 kilometers. The distance between the Earth and the sun is 150 million kilometers. The distance between the Earth and Saturn is 1.66. It's between 1.20 and 1.66 billion kilometers. So what are we saying here? This is just the second heaven. So imagine the light that was pushed off to the 7th heaven, how far it is. And when Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and so on and so forth, till Moshe Rabbeinu brought back the Shekhinah down here in the world, we're talking about a distance which is so incredible. Incredible. When I read this, what came up to my mind is that you might think, on one hand, when you think about it, you think about this big universe, and we're talking about billions of kilometers, right, of distance. So you can imagine the vastitude of the whole creation of God. So you feel very small. Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, says the Rebbe in the Maimer, Basi Legani nisave HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyeslo dira b'tachtenu. I came to my garden. All of this is not important to me. As small as you are, you're the most important for me. And how did I create this world, this whole universe? By making a space within me. It mentions this in the Maimer. You make a space into yourself. You break your nature. You're inviting me. You're basically, in other words, it doesn't say it in these words, you're mirroring what I am doing. Therefore, at a speed which is even greater than the speed of light, I mean, you bring down the highest level of light, which is called Sovev Kol Almin, down here in the world. But this all starts, this is the way you make the dira, this is the way you make the house, that you should dwell within us. So on one hand, sometimes you might feel despair. You're so small. Power of darkness and the fact that God is hidden is so, right? So you have to know that that too is Hashem. Once you recognize that, and how will I know that that too is Hashem? Once you're able to give up on the world, you're able to break your nature, that's the moment you recognize that nature itself is Hashem. And then you let in the light of Hashem. Have a great day.